Ruslan.
When Timothy Keller was invited to speak at Google, I was shocked that this was a thing, man. Shout out to Google. Hopefully we get back to seeing more pastors and preachers and Christians and communicators speaking into these places. This is from a couple years ago, and it was sent to me by someone on Instagram from 6 years ago. And it says, Making Sense of God, an invitation to be skeptical. Talks at Google. Tim Keller. Rest in peace, Timothy Keller. This is amazing, and I wanted to play some of this for you guys because I thought this is so dope that Google invited Timothy Keller to speak.
So the book is about how belief in God or religious faith or Christian faith can make sense to somebody today. It's about how it's possible for that to make sense. Now, I would like to make the case right now that that should be of some interest to you no matter who you are. Chapter 1 tries to make that case, that no matter who you are, you should at least care about how people come to their faith positions, how their beliefs come to make sense to them. In Chapter 1, I make the case that there's actually two trends that are marked in the world with regard to religion. Here's the one. The one is, and I know what I'm going to say is going to sound counterintuitive to you, but...
Here is the book that he's covering, Timothy Keller, Making Sense of God. And I love that he's speaking to this at Google. Like, how amazing is this? If there's anything, if I'm honest with you guys, man, like I love being in these sorts of environments, in case you couldn't tell. I love being around skeptics. I love being around non-Christians. I love being around atheists because I love having sober conversations about God, the realities of God, the realities of his word and the goodness of God, how beneficial his ways are to people, even if they don't all the way get it yet. I love having these conversations. This is so dope that Timothy Keller was a part of this.
Explains, and there's really not much doubt about this, that in general, the world is becoming more religious and will for the next 30 to 50 years at least.
Interesting.
It's getting more religious. The reasons for that, which are laid out there, are everything here is brief. You can always ask more later. Is that both Christianity and Islam are both converting people at a rate faster than the population is growing, and that's the reason why they're growing. Secondly, it's also true that religious people have a lot more children than secular people and non-believing people. So you put
come on, Tim.
All that together, all of the demographic projections are that actually the number of people today in the world that say they're secular, no religious preference, is close to 17%. Over the next 35 years, that's going down to about 12%.
So I think he's speaking on a global level, because people would say, well, where this stuff's happening in the West, and people in the West aren't going to church, they're not as religious. Well, look at all the other nonsense we're dealing with in the West, right? There's a lot of goofy stuff that we're dealing with in the West. And so, but globally speaking, he's absolutely right. Christianity is spreading. Obviously, Islam is spreading, though people would argue that Islam is spreading because they just tend to have more kids, where Christianity is actually expanding, and the biggest Christian continent, for example, right now is Africa. Other regions that have not been evangelized, right? We're talking about parts of Asia. We're talking about China. There's a huge movement in the underground church in China. So I'm going to make sure I made that clear.
On the one hand, religion, the world's becoming more religious. On the other hand, parts of the world are becoming more secular than they've ever been before. Parts of the world are going to be marked by more and more people who say, religion doesn't make sense to me. Believing God doesn't make sense to me. Now, what this means is that there's two kinds of slogans that you should never believe. One is that religion's going away. It's just not. And I do hear it a lot that religion's dying out, younger people are less religious. Which younger people? Well, the people I know, okay, but you have to look at the world. And it's not true that religion is dying out, and it won't. So the idea that religion is going away is just not true. But the idea that in some triumphalistic sense, that religion will triumph, or Christianity will triumph in the world, that's not going to happen either. And since both these trends are true, religion is not going away, and yet parts of the world are going to become less religious than they've ever been. What that does mean is it should matter to us how people come to their various positions. Increasing numbers of people are finding that belief in a universe without God makes sense to them. They believe in a universe without God, and that makes sense to them. And other people are...
By the way, that's crazy. Belief in a universe without... This is New Ageism, right? Belief in a universe without God makes sense to them. That does not make sense. How can you believe in a universe that's all powerful and is serving you for your good and all this stuff without believing that there's a God behind that universe? And that God has an order to things. And that God has ways and things that need to be happening for him to receive you and for you to be in communion with him. That's crazy that the type of religion we see spreading in the West is this sort of nonsensical view of things.
Finding that belief in God and a universe filled with God makes sense to them. How do they get to those positions?
Yeah.
We actually often do not really talk enough about that. Because people don't want to say, how do you get there?
Right.
By the way, people who lose their religious faith usually say, I just saw the truth. And people who get converted usually say, I just saw the light. But that's not very illuminating.
Yep.
Instead, I'm going to make the case that the process by which we come to our beliefs, to believe in a universe without God or believe in a universe with God, are actually more complicated than that. So in chapter 2, what I do, and I want to spend a little time here with you just for a moment to lay out what I do there, is I tackle this simplistic idea. So, for example, one of the things that people say a lot, I see it on the internet all the time, and I talk to people in New York all the time, who say this, and that is this. It's a popular belief to say, belief that there is no God is arrived at mainly through using reason. So if you come to the conclusion that there is no God, that happened through reason.
That's cap.
But if you come to believe that there is a God, that's a leap of faith. Okay. So belief that there is no God through reason, belief that there is a God through faith. I'm here to tell you, actually, that is wrong. It's naive. It's simplistic. The fact of the matter is, both sides use a combination.
That's right.
Of reason and faith.
That's right.
So to press a little bit, I would put this. Here's the thesis that I put out in the chapter 2, and I'll try to defend it in about 4 or 5 minutes here. Okay. And here's the thesis: to move from religion to secularism, to move from religious faith to a secular belief that there is a God, no God, or maybe there's no God. So to move from religious faith to secularism is not so much a loss of faith as a shift in a shift to a new set of beliefs.
Woo-hoo! And I say this all the time. You ever notice the people that grew up in fundamentalist, fringe, radical homes tend to just be fundamentalist and radical about new ideas? They start saying all kinds of goofy stuff. You ever notice it's the same zeal and the same dogma? They just swipe. They just took the jersey and reversible jersey, baby. That's all it is. Because they didn't really deconvert. They just reconverted to some nonsense.
To a new community of faith, where the lines between orthodoxy and heresy are just drawn in different places.
Come on.
So if you're religious, you grew up in a church, say, or synagogue.
Wow.
And then you move to being non-religious. I'm a secular person. I actually don't believe in God.
Yep.
That's not so much a loss of faith as actually a movement from one set of beliefs to a new set of beliefs, from one community of faith to another community of faith, from one standard of orthodoxy and heresy to another standard of orthodoxy and heresy.
And you guys know, we all know there is heresies that are absolutely happening in the world. Absolutely heresies happening in the world. You start saying things like, I believe marriage was designed for one man and one woman. How dare you, bigot? Hey, I don't think we should have the right to delete unborn humans. How dare you, heresy, bigot? You ever notice that it's the same? It's the same thing, right? You challenge those two things, and it's the equivalent of you denying that Jesus is God. Right? It's the equivalent, right? It's the same thing. And so Timothy Keller is going in here, but this is everywhere. This stuff is everywhere. This stuff is everywhere.
Say, well, I know that's kind of a provocative thesis, and not most people think that. Let me show you, I think, how I can demonstrate that. Secular people that I know, and I'm not saying all of you, if you say, well, I consider myself a person who doesn't really believe in God, so I consider myself something of a secular person. I'm not saying this is true of everybody. I'm saying plenty of people I've talked to who say I'm secular or I'm a non-religious person actually have two sets of beliefs, and they are beliefs. What are they? I will call them proofism and humanism.
Proofism and humanism.
Now, what's proofism? It's a coined word. It's not the most felicitous phrase, but I'm trying to get at this. What many people will say to me is, I'd be happy to believe in God if you could prove it to me. I'd be happy to believe in Christianity if you could prove it to me.
I'd be happy to believe that somebody could be born a biological man and all of a sudden transition to being a woman. Prove it to me. Oh, you can't. You can't prove it to me, can you? I'd say there's substantially way more proof that there is a God, that Jesus is who he says he is, that he literally died and he literally rose on the third day, than there is for someone being born in the wrong body.
But since there isn't any evidence, you can't prove it to me, therefore I shouldn't believe it. Now, That statement is wrong on a number of levels, and actually is a statement of faith. Wow. Well, number one, when you say you shouldn't believe something unless it can be empirically proven, the problem is that that statement can't be empirically proven. For about 100 years, philosophers have pointed that out. To make a claim like that, to make a claim that you shouldn't believe something unless it's proven, is itself a statement that can't be proven. It's an assertion. It's not an argument.
That's a gem right there. To make this statement that something you can't believe something unless it's proven is there's a lot of things that we believe that we can't prove. There's a lot of things we believe that we can't prove. Right? A lot of things that people are going through life with certain presuppositions about certain things we'd all acknowledge to be as true, yet you can't necessarily prove.
It's just a sweeping statement, and it can't meet its own criteria. Secondly, when people say to me, well, I could be happy to believe in God if you could prove it to me, but if you can't prove it to me, I can't believe in God. The problem is that everybody bases their lives on beliefs that they can't prove.
Come on.
If you believe in human rights, if you believe we ought to take care of the poor and not trample the poor, can you prove that? Of course you can't. Actually, everybody bases their lives on deep convictions that just can't be proven. So it's quite wrong to say, for example, to Christians, you've got to prove your beliefs, but then I don't have to prove my beliefs. The fact is nobody, frankly, can prove the most important beliefs on which their life is based. And thirdly, by the way, you probably would guess, especially those of you with a philosophy background, is there's not a lot of agreement on what the word proof means. See, it is true that I think most people agree it's possible to prove that substance X boils at temperature Y at barometric pressure Z. And therefore, if I can demonstrate that, then we could say that's been proven. But beyond that, how do you prove historical claims?
Come on.
When is a historical claim that something happened 300 years ago, when has that been proven? Or how do you prove any moral values? How do you prove that human rights are important or they're there? The answer is nobody actually agrees on what proof is, because some people say that was proven, other people say, well, how do you define proof? And so in the end, if you're a person who says, because of my rationality, I cannot believe in God or Christianity, what you're actually doing is you're assuming a set of beliefs about how rationality operates that are really a set of beliefs. And they're not self-evident to everybody. They're contested. So they're really a set of beliefs.
I personally like to say proof beyond a reasonable doubt. I feel like I can walk somebody through the argument that Jesus is who he says he is, that he really died, that he really rose from the grave, beyond a reasonable doubt. I feel like I can walk somebody through why the scriptures are reliable beyond a reasonable doubt.
To say I can't believe in Christianity because you haven't proven it is a set of beliefs. Then the other thing that besides what I call proofism, which is a set of beliefs about rationality, which can't be proven, most secular people I know also are what you might call humanists. And humanism means they believe it's important that every human being be treated with dignity, that people's rights not be trampled upon, that we not oppress people, that we share our goods and our power with others and not exploit them, right? When you say most, I mean, let's put it this way. Most of the atheists and most of the secular or non-religious people I know believe that. But here's a question. How do you prove that? What is that? Not only is that a set of beliefs, but frankly, those beliefs take more faith to believe in. See, if you're a Hindu, you believe the world is such that you will get off the cycle of reincarnation if you live a good life. If you don't live a good life, you keep getting reincarnated. If you live a good life, eventually you can be taken off the cycle of reincarnation and go into eternal bliss. If you believe the Bible, so if you are an Orthodox Jew or you're a Christian believer, you believe that God made the world, a loving God made the world, and you should love your neighbor so that you're like God and you can know him and you can be saved. In other words, to live a good life of humanistic values fits in with the Hindu view of what the universe is like. And it fits in with the Christian view or the Jewish view of what the universe is like. But what is the secular view of the world? It's called a materialist view, which is to say there's no supernatural, there's only natural. There's no soul and there's no heaven. It's just everything has a natural cause. So just to show the problem with that, or I like to say the amount of faith it takes to have humanistic values with that view of the world. Last year I found this, this was written in the New York Times. It was actually a letter. It says, there are 30,000 galaxies of over 13 billion years old. So there's 30,000 galaxies, 13 billion years old, with many trillions of stars and many, many more trillions of inferred planets. So how significant are you? He's talking to individual people. How significant are you? You are not special. You're just another piece of decaying matter on the compost pile of this world. Nothing of who you are and what you do in the short time you are here will ever matter. Everything short of that realization is vanity. Therefore, or it says so, celebrate life in every moment. Admire its wonders, and love people without reservation. Now, the word so, most of us think the word so means this logically leads to that. When you say so, we think that somehow what comes before the so should lead you to do what comes after the so, right? And here's the question. The first part of that statement is a bracing, wonderfully honest look at what it means to believe in a materialist universe. You're not here.
Yep. And if you even listen to Neil deGrasse Tyson or the guys that are materialists, they'll just tell you, like, I think we're stardust. Humans are stardust, right? And it's like, what? So it's random. There's no real cause for anything. And we're stardust.
For any purpose. No one put you here. You came up through evolution, red in tooth and claw, you know, the strong eating the weak. Your ancestors are, you're only here because your ancestors killed weaker organisms. And in the end, eventually, you're going to die, then the sun is going to die, then civilization will die. And in the end, whether you're a genocidal maniac or whether you're an altruist and philanthropist will make no difference in the end. There won't be anybody around to remember anything that anyone's ever done. So in the end, nothing you do will matter, right? Therefore, he says, love one another. See,
how do you even have the ability to define love if everything is completely random?
Here's the question. If that's the case, the nature of the universe, why should I love other people?
Right.
If my ancestors got here by destroying and eating the weaker organisms, why should I now suddenly become unselfish? And the answer is, if you want to believe in humanistic values, I'm glad, by the way. I am really glad. The more people that believe in humanistic values, I think the better the world will be. But it doesn't follow from your view of the universe at all. It's a huge leap of faith, unbelievable leap of faith. It doesn't take huge faith to go from the Hindu view of the universe to humanistic values, or from the Christian view of the universe to humanistic values. But it does from the materialistic, the secular view to humanistic values. You can believe them, but don't tell me that that's not a leap of faith. It's an enormous leap of faith.
Wow. Timothy Keller, ladies and gentlemen. What a great breakdown that any worldview you get behind is a leap of faith, not just one that is anchored on faith. Because any of those things, materialistic, humanistic, whatever, are all anchored on faith. And again, the more you dig in, the more you'll realize that people are just as radical and fundamentalist about their own dogmas and their own heresies as quote-unquote Christians are claimed to be. I would say the Christians sound like the sensible ones in the room after all the stuff we've been seeing with the ideologies being spread. So big shout out to Timothy Keller. Rest in peace, Timothy Keller. Great breakdown. If you guys want to see me do a part 2 of this clip, let me know. I would love to get into it, or you can go watch it on your own. I think he completely nails it. A lot of the same stuff. I've never heard the speech, so a lot of the same stuff I've been saying, he's saying here. He sounds way smarter than I do saying it. And how cool is it that he got invited to speak at Google and drop this whole thing down, man? It's so amazing, guys.
Las Vegas, join me, and some of you guys might be familiar with my boy Ruslan KD.
Las Vegas, join me for the Christian Influencers Convention happening July 26th from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m.
We'll be doing a panel with some of the top influencers in the country, as well as a private, intimate meet and greet.
You can get tickets and more information by hitting the Eventbrite link below.
Don't miss this opportunity to come and hang out and spend some time with some of your favorite Christian influencers.
All in the beautiful city of Las Vegas. July 26th, I'll see you over there. Peace.
I'll see you there. What do you mean?